Namaskar. My name is Manisha Madhukar Renghe. I am working as a librarian in DAV Velankar College of Commerce. My today's seminar topic is Rights of Persons with Disabilities. For the full development as a human being, exercise and enjoyment of human rights are necessary. Human rights and fundamental freedom help us to develop our instinct, qualities, intelligence, talent, and concise to meet our materials and spiritual needs to fulfill the development of human personality and strengthening of the respect and friendship among all nations and social all religious group and shall further activities for the maintenance of peace. Historically, education is an instrument of development and an important factor in a social change. In this view, human rights and freedom of oneself as much as others is considered a fundamental tool to guarantee the respect of all human rights for each and every person. The study human rights should be included in curriculum or syllabus in school and colleges, making it an essential part of learning process. Introduction. Persons with disabilities have always been regarded as a subject of despair, sympathy, and care. The issue of disabilities has generally been addressed by government around the world, other either by their welfare program or statutory enactment. The issue of capable of being addressed at the local and national level. The international the international disability issue start with anti-racist, feminist, gay movement going around the world as it create a sense of awareness in them or not being disabled but differently able. Despite being the largest minority group, there was a dearth of the dedicated binding instrument on the right of disabled people. Previous instrument like standard rules of equalization opportunities for persons with disabilities. UN declared the rights of mentally retarded person, right of disabled persons, principle for the protection of person with mental illness and improvement of mental health care, etc. Meaning and definition of disabilities. You have often heard people with disabilities being referred as handicapped. Did you know that such references can be inaccurate? A person can be handicapped in a certain environment with being disabled or have a disabilities but not be handicapped in a many places. A disability is often defined as a malfunctioning, disburse, loss of normal functioning of physical, mental, or psychological process difficult in the ability to learn, adjust socially, which interface with person normal growth and development. A handicap is a difficult experience by a person because the nature of environment which she find herself or instant. Even if individual has a locomotor disabilities, she will still be mobile as long she can get around the wheelchair. Medical definition of disabilities. The World Health Organization WHO in 1976 provide a threefold definition: impairment, disabilities and handicap, explaining that an impairment is an loss of abnormalities, psychological or anatomical structure or function. Disability is any restriction or a lack of ability perform an activities in the manner or within the range considered normal for a human being. A handicap is a disadvantage for a given individual resulting from the impairment or disability that prevents fulfillment of a role that considered normal for that individual. Social definition of disabilities. The change is understanding of disabilities from an individual pathology to a social construct is a best reflect in the way UN standard rules on equalization opportunities for the person with disabilities 1993. The defined disability according to the rules: people may be disabled by physical, intellectual or sensor impairment, medical condition or mental illness. A distinction has made between disability and handicap. A handicap is a considered loss or limitation of opportunities to take a part in community like on an equal level with others. Human rights definition of disabilities. The definition of disability adopted by British Council also take into account of social condition which disable a group of individuals by ignoring their needs of accessing opportunities a manner different from other. However, it is also view these social conditions as infringing upon human rights, disable and as instant of discrimination against them. According to the definition, disability is the disadvantage, restriction of activity caused by society which takes a little or none account of people who have impaired, thus excludes them from mainstream activities. Disability estimate. It is estimated that there are about 600 million people in the world who have disabilities of one form or other. Over two-thirds of them live in developing countries with high density of their population. Sub-Saharan Africa and the East Asia, there is a wide variation in the estimated disabilities rate reported by the developed and developing countries. A variation depends to a large extent on the definition of disabilities used, which either expand or limit the disabilities group covered in a survey. For instance, using overly restricted definition disability, the census of India 2001 yield an average 2.13% people with disability as compared 91.1 in New Zealand and 18% in Australia. The Indian law and disabilities. The Constitution of India is premised on the principle of social justice, human rights, preamble, directive principle, state policy, and the fundamental rights. And fundamental rights constitution stand a testimony to the commitment of the state to its people. These provision a very positive role state in the upliftment of the state disadvantaged group. For example, Article 41 enjoys that the state shall, within limits or its economic capacity and development, make effective provision for securing their rights to work, education, and public assistance in a case of unemployment, old age, sickness, and disablement. Person with disabilities, equal opportunity, protection, rights, and full participation Act 1995. The act, which catalogs the rights of people with disabilities in India, was passed by the Parliament of India on December 12, 1995, and notified on February 7, 1996. The act was a landmark that for the first time it is stated that people with disabilities had the right to equal opportunities and full participation, that these rights should be protected by the law. The act elaborates at some length duties of the government and various level and other establishment under their control. It also provides useful guidance regarding types and nature of measure that would equalize opportunities for the enjoyment basic rights freedom. The act is arrangement in these three parts. Part first. In a part first chapter, act list and defines the abilities covered disabilities covered under it. These disabilities are blindness, low vision, disabilities as a result of leprosy, hearing impairment, locomotor disabilities, mental retardedness, and mental illness. The act specifies the minimum degree of disabilities to 40% to entitle a person with disabilities to the benefit under the act. Authority certified disability has also been specified. A medical board comprising 3 specialists from the government hospital can issue a disability certificate. Part 2. In order to make up the fast discrimination and deter it from the happening in the future, the act enlists various duties the government relations to the right person with disabilities under the chapter 5 education, chapter 6 employment, chapter 7 affirmative action, chapter 8 on discrimination, chapter 9 research and manpower development, chapter 10 recognize the institution of person with disabilities, chapter 11 institution for person with with served disabilities, make a provision for that, for what called affirmative action, preferential action designed to improve the state of people with disabilities. It is therefore government responsibility to provide people with disability aid and appellants which reduce the eliminate and limitation on function imposed by the duties. The government is also required to show preferences to the people with disabilities when it allow land or building houses and setting up business, and also for the creation of special school and recreational centers for the people with disabilities. Part 3. The Act provides a monitoring mechanism in the center as well as state. For the purpose, it has established the Office of Chief Commissioner and State Commissioner for Persons with Disabilities. Function of the Chief Commissioner are coordinate the work of Commissioner, monitor the utilization of funds disturbed by the central government, take step to safeguard the right and facilities made available to the person with disabilities, submit report to the central government on the implementation of the act such intervals as that government may prescribe. The Rehabilitation Council of India 1992. The Rehabilitation of Council India was set up the Government of India in 1986 initially as a society regulate the standardized training policies and program in the field of rehabilitation of persons with disability. Urgent need for minimum standard was felt as majority of person engaged education, violation, training and counseling. Person with disabilities were not professionally qualified. Poor academic training and standard adversely affect the chance of disabled succeeding in the world of work. Therefore, an act of parliament in 1992 enhanced the state of council to a statutory body with the following aims: to stand training courses for professional dealing with people with disabilities, to prescribe a minimum standard of education and training, various categories of professional dealing with people with disabilities, to regulate this standard in all training institutions uniformly throughout the country, to promote research in rehabilitation and special education, the National Trust Welfare of Person with Austin Cerebral Palsy, Mental Retardedness and Multiple Disabilities Act 1999. The Mental Health Act 1987. Conclusion. The Convention on the Right of Person with Disability is a landmark achievement in the history of human rights jurisprudence. It has not only given an authoritative definition the term disability, but also provide the person with disability with a serious rights of the entitlement which are binding on the state parties just like any other human rights treaty. It has also provided for a mechanism from reporting to the disabilities committee on the measurement taken by the state party. Implementation provision of convention. One of the unique feature of the convention is to recognize both medical and social disabilities for defining person with disability as evidence from Article 1 Convention. Another interesting provision contained in the Convention in obligation the state parties to designate focal point and establishment coordination mechanism with the government of implementation, monitoring the convention at domestic level. Thank you. झालं.